YouTube, this is Mad Movie Mark of the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1940 comedy, The Baked Dick.
What's he up to now? What is he up to?
Your guess is good as mine, Ma. I never know what to expect next.
Well, I tried to not make it too much of a secret. I am giving you a great review of a 1940s comedy. I'm also watching and reviewing all the movies that have 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'll give them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them all, I will rank them from best to worst. I started in the 1920s silent movie era, and now I'm at 1940s with The Baked Dick. So this movie stars W.C. Fields as Egbert Souse. Now, I've never seen a W.C. Fields movie before. This is the first time. I know that he was considered one of the big comedy actors back in the day. He was also a juggler and sort of a vaudeville actor. I don't think he was at the same tier of like a Marx Brother, a Charlie Chaplin, or Albert and Costello, but he was one of the big comedic actors back then. I've seen every movie that the Marx Brothers have done, and I absolutely love the Marx Brothers. I've also seen a few of the skits from Albert and Costello, and I thought they were funny, and I love all the things I've seen so far with Charlie Chaplin. So I will not say that I love all the comedies from these early eras, because that would absolutely not be true, but I do love some of the big comedic acts of that era, of this era. So far, a lot of the comedies from the 30s and 40s have been a bunch of duds for me. I don't understand them. They have a lot of political references, or they have a lot of modern day references back then that I don't get, and the jokes fall flat for me. But I will say that I did somewhat enjoy this movie, so this movie wasn't as much of a dumpster fire as a lot of the other ones have been. It also stars Shemp Howard, who is known as one of the Three Stooges. He took over Curly's position when Curly was unable, too ill to continue to be one of the Three Stooges. It stars Grady Sutton as Og Ogilvy. He is the son-in-law of Egbert Souse, and Franklin Pagborn, who plays Snoopington, who is a bank examiner. So this movie starts with the family of Egbert Souse complaining about how he kind of lopes around, sits in his room and smokes all day and drinks and doesn't have a job and doesn't try to pursue any type of career, really doesn't want to make anything of himself, just kind of wants to lazy around and live off others. One day he goes to the bar, and while he's at the bar, he overhears some guy talking about a movie that he's making. They need to find a new director because their current director is drunk and can no longer continue with the script.
Lock on a movie location. My director started on a bender last night, and that's always good for 10 days. We got a 36-hour schedule and a stinko script. It's a one-reel and a bupkey, and it opens in this very town the day after tomorrow.
Paul, you're yelling right down my alley. In the old Senate days, I used to direct Fatty Arbuckle, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and the rest of them.
I thought this was funny because his current director is drunk, so what does he do to find a new director? He goes to a bar. Now, Egbert Souse is sitting there, and he says, "Oh, now you see, I can't do his impersonation of him, but basically what he says is he used to be this big director back in the day, and he directed all these big acts, and it's your lucky day because I will direct your film." So they take him onto the set, and when he gets onto the set, the actors come out of their car, and he approaches the actors, and he tries to mingle with them and meet with them, and the actor says, "You know, I don't think that this is the role for me. I don't think this fits my personality." And Jose's like, "Don't worry, I've changed the entire script."
I don't know whether this part is suited to my personality or not.
Don't give it a thought. I've changed everything. Instead of it being an English drawing room drama, I've made it a circus picture.
It's no longer going to be, I think it was like some sort of drama. It's now going to be about a circus. And then after he says it's going to be about a circus, he starts talking about how the actor is going to be a big football player, and he's going to make a big football play and make a big touchdown.
It's Saturday afternoon. You make touchdown after touchdown. You kick goals. You make passes. You make the longest run with a ball that was ever made on the field.
These clothes.
You can change your hat.
Which is ridiculous. I don't know if back then circus and football were part of the same thing, or if it's just meant to be some hidden dialogue that's supposed to be really funny once you figure it out. But I thought it was hilarious. He's just going on this long diatribe about how these characters are what they're going to do and how it's going to be different. And what the female actress says, well, how am I supposed to be in the stands and watching him at the same time and doing all this other stuff? He says, don't worry, it's all the script. Even though it's nothing's in the script, because there is no script. This is just off the top of his head. So the movie kind of takes 5, and he goes and he tries to get into a bar called the Black Pussycat, or I think the Black Pussy or Pussycat or something, but it's locked, so he can't get in. And then we see his son-in-law, who works at a bank. Their bank is being robbed by 2 men. The men take the money and they run away, and then it just so happens that as they're eluding the cops, one of the bank robbers gets knocked over the head by the other one, and the one who knocked him over the head takes all the money, and Souse accidentally stops him when the gunman throws his gun away, and it hits Souse, and he captures one of the criminals by accident because he gets hit over the head by a gun.
That's not one of the crooks. That's Mr. Souse.
Yeah, Suze, accent drive. Over the A.
Now, this is reminiscent of an episode of Andy Griffith. Actually, this whole movie is a lot of Andy Griffith stuff in it, and I don't know if Andy Griffith borrowed from this movie, but as soon as I saw these things, it harkened back to my childhood with Andy Griffith. So he accidentally stops a crook in mid-crooking, and then he's held a hero by the town. And this happened exactly to Barney Fife and Andy Griffith as well. And then he goes to the bank, and the guy at the bank says, we're so glad and we're so excited that you saved all the money from the bank that we're going to give you this free poster. And we're also going to offer you the job as a bank detective, also known as the Bank Dick. So that's where the name of the movie comes from.
Be seated.
Oh, thanks.
I've been in consultation with our director, and we've decided that what has been needed in this bank for a long time is a special officer.
Oh, yeah.
Or to revert to the argot of the underworld, a bank dick.
Oh, yeah.
In lieu of your heroism, your valiant, dauntless courage, I have the honor to offer you this position.
He accepts, and then he goes about being the I guess it's the guard of the bank. That's what the bank dick is. It's like security. As soon as he gets a job, he goes back to the bar and he starts drinking. And he starts telling the bartender that he is going to be this big banker one day. He's probably going to own the bank. He's going to be the big head of the bank one day. And there's this guy next to him who says, oh, you're just the man I was looking for. I have all these stocks I want to sell you. And they're going to be big, and it's going to make you a lot of money. And you can buy one for 5 cents that's worth 10 cents. And then if you buy a bunch of them, you'll make even more money. It's a guaranteed thing, and it's a mining stock. If any of you know anything about mining stocks, they used to really hawk these things back in the day, and they weren't worth anything.
Pardon me. I couldn't help overhearing your conversation.
Pardon me.
It's quite all right. Waterbury's my name, J. Frothingham Waterbury.
Oh, thank you. Very glad to know you. My name's Souse.
How do you do, Mr. Suze?
Accent grave over the E.
Oh, so? Yeah. I'm in the bond and stock business.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I have 5,000 shares of the beefsteak mines in Leapfrog, Nevada.
Also, Andy Griffith episode where this guy tries to sell shares of his music company, and they buy in, and then they're told that it's a big sham. And, you know, it ends the same way in Andy Griffith as it ends here. But so he convinces his stepson to buy shares in this mine.
Poor fellow's in trouble. Something the matter with his grandmother's paisley shawl. He has 5,000 shares in the beefsteak mine, and you can buy them for a handful of hay.
But his stepson doesn't have the money, so he convinces his stepson to steal money from the bank, and then once he gets his bonus, he can pay the bank back. That's basically how he's going to do it. So his stepson does it, and then the next day, the bank examiner, Snoopyton, comes in to look at the books.
Very glad. J. Pickerton Snoopington, bank examiner, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, he'll be very glad to see you.
Now this, of course, makes his stepson incredibly nervous. He feels like he's going to lose his job. He's lost his future with his fiancée, with Souse's daughter, and it's basically ruined his life. But Egbert Souse has come up with an idea. He's going to get the bank examiner extremely drunk, and then he's going to get him so drunk that it's going to make him violently ill. And he also has his friend, the bartender, Ship Howard's character, the bartender, slip him some kind of Mickey or something that makes him very ill.
Public library, 3 blocks of paved streets, 2 trains a day, not counting the milk train, goes through 4 o'clock in the morning. We have 3 drugstores.
Stop.
1 actually sells medicine.
Stop, I'm dying.
And if he can make him ill for 3 days, then that'll give his stepson enough time to get his bonus and pay the bank back. Unfortunately, though, even though the bank examiner is extremely ill, he still gets up the next day to perform his duties because that's his job, and this is basically what he lives for. Now, Soze does everything he can to try to prevent the bank examiner from examining the books. He breaks his glasses. He basically does whatever he needs to. And then the bank examiner looks at the stepson who works at the bank. He's like, do you think possibly your future father-in-law is trying to get me to stop examining these books? Do you think something's wrong here?
It couldn't be possible that Mr. Souse is trying to keep me from examining the books.
And then the stepson just runs out because he doesn't want the jig to be up, basically. We then find out that the shares of the mine that were bought, the mine is a bonanza, and the stepson is now a millionaire, and so is Soze. But unfortunately, the bank robber from the beginning of the movie is somehow sprung out of jail and is at the bank again and is kidnapping Soze and a bunch of money, and they get in a getaway car and they drive away. The cops immediately start following them in tow, and there's this violent chase where where Soze's car starts falling apart, and eventually the whole thing falls apart. A piece comes and knocks out the bank robber, and Soze is once again heralded as the person who caught the bank robber, which also happened in Andy Griffith. And then at the end, they're millionaires, and they live happily ever after. Sorry, my nose is just crazy. So what did I think of this movie? Well, I thought this movie was funny. Throughout the entire movie, I thought there were pieces that were funny. At the end, when the car is falling apart, I thought that was hilarious. The bank examiner's name is Snoopyton, which I also think is hilarious. There's a point in the movie where the bank examiner says, "I need to talk to your boss." And Soze says, "Oh, he's at a golf course on a business trip," which I also thought was pretty funny because I've worked in finance, and they do a lot of business trips on the golf course, and for some reason, I just thought that was funny. A lot of the stuff in the beginning where he's directing this movie, I also thought was hilarious. So all in all, I thought the movie was pretty funny. The only thing that I don't like about this movie, that I don't like about almost every comedy from the 1930s and 40s, is that this main character is an alcoholic. He's constantly at the bar. Now, this was before they knew alcoholism was a disease. They apparently just thought it was a funny thing to put in a movie. But I just don't find it funny. The thing about Soze, though, is that I never feel like what he's doing is driven because he's drunk. It's not happening because he's an alcoholic. Yes, he's drinking, and he's drinking heavily, but he's he's clear-minded enough to come up with these ideas. He's clear-minded enough to know what he's doing, and I just don't think he comes off as drunk. They're showing him drinking, and the way he talks and his speech patterns, I think just normally makes him sound drunk. But I never felt like he was actually doing anything. None of his motives or none of the things he did were because he was drunk. Everything was because he is who he is, and honestly, it's not a very good person. He's really mean to the children, to the grandchildren. He kind of does a lot of things for his own good, like when he convinces his stepson to steal from the bank. I mean, you don't do that unless you're absolutely out for something for yourself, but obviously he wants his stepson to have money also. But the fact that he didn't own up to it and he just tried to get the bank examiner drugged and drunk. So there's a lot of things in here that definitely should not have happened and he should not be doing. And at the end, he just ends up rich and probably didn't learn anything from it. So there's no character arc really in this movie. He's same from the beginning to the end. I don't know if, I mean, in comedies, usually there's some sort of arc. I mean, even in The Jerk, there was an arc. I mean, but there isn't really in this movie. Everyone starts out the way they are and ends the way they are, except for Souse's family, who at the end loves him because he's rich and he finally has some money. But other than that, no one really changes. But on the whole, out of all the comedies I've watched from the 30s and 40s, this one I actually laughed at, and this one I actually understood mostly. The one-liners are pretty quick. The stuff Souse says is pretty funny. You just have to like really listen to what he's saying. And all in all, I thought it was a pretty good movie. Like I said, though, not a fan of the alcoholism, not a fan of there being no real redeemable characters in this movie. There's no real hero. There's only kind of villains, unless you call the bank examiner a hero, but I don't know if you could. So I think it lacked a little bit, and then it had a little bit. Watching W.C. Fields, I don't think he's like a great actor. Like I would say the Marx Brothers are really quite good. Definitely Charlie Chaplin, I would say, is a fantastic actor, a great actor probably. But I would say he's on par with anyone else from this era, but I wouldn't put him in the upper echelon of actors. I wouldn't say he's one of the great actors of this era. I haven't seen any of his other movies, but my assumption is a lot of it is the same because in real life he was a drunk, he was an alcoholic, so he's not really like going too far from reality when he's playing these characters. But just in that sense, the drunk comedies is not something I enjoy. I really hope I get out of this era where being drunk was funny at some point, but I'm still there. But anyway, I will give it a 7.5 out of 10. So I kind of said it was a really good comedy and I really enjoyed it and I thought it was funny. So why only a 7.5? Well, besides the one-liners and the bits that I thought were funny, there are a lot of scenes in this movie that aren't that great. The end with the car chase is pretty funny, but it just, maybe for the time, the 1940s, it was done really well. But there's a screen playing in front of them that quite obviously is the same scene over and over again, where they're trying to round these turns on a mountain. And the stunt devil who is driving the car is definitely not W.C. Fields. He's much lighter, like much slimmer, and completely different person. So that kind of took me out of the chase scene, to be honest. I was really into the chase scene until I saw like the stunt doubles, the body doubles they were using, and they're just so bad, they're not even close. I don't know if that's supposed to be funny because it's a comedy and you're supposed to see that and laugh, but for me, it takes me out of what is a really good kind of comedic chase scene and just pulls me completely out of it. And I couldn't get back to a point where I thought it was funny. So like I said, I will give it a 7.5 out of 10. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.